Before the world lost Leon, Russell held an unnoticed truth. This was about George Harrison. Two legends shared one of the most memorable moments at musical events. Everyone witnessed the fame, music, and fortune. But what Russell saw behind the scenes shocked him. Russell went through Harrison's true nature when the lights were down, the audience gone, and the pressure intense. And this Harrison personal life fact will shock you. Harrison and Russell's legendary relationship. Point 2. Renowned musicians met in August 1971 at a moment that redefined rock collaboration. George Harrison and Leon Russell shared stage at one of the genre's most ambitious live events. Despite hard labor, rehearsals, late nights, and nonstop musicals, night felt like a celebration, solving problems. It was rare for Russell to see Harrison up close, away from Beatle fame and studio gloss, and what he saw stuck. Leon Russell started working professionally in his teens. Born April 2nd, Claude Russell Bridges 1942 in Layton, Oklahoma, he worked long hours to build his reputation, several roles, no spotlight guaranteed. By the late 1960s, he was famous in the industry as a versatile musician, master of nicknames time and space-worn ads. It came from peers who saw him switch between keyboard, guitar, arranging, producing, and band leadership without slacking. His resume included early sessions and collaborations with musicians at pinnacle of popular music, and his songs were heartfelt. George Harrison entered from another direction at that moment. He had been born in Liverpool on February 25, 1943. Spent a decade in the world's most famous band. As guitarist he went from unassuming junior member to proficient songwriter in the Beatles, standing next to Lennon and McCartney. Outside of charts and touring, Harrison had also studied and collaborated with Ravi Shankar in Indian classical music. Harrison was tired of being a former Beatle by 1971. His goal was to influence, with intent. This ambition became reality with the Bangladesh concert at Madison Square Garden on August 1, 1971, coordinated by Harrison and Shankar. The concert raised money and awareness for Bangladesh liberation, war refugees. Both the cause and scale made it unprecedented. Major artists sacrificed time without rehearsal or promise of perfection. The lineup includes Bob Dylan, Clapton, Starr, Badfinger, Preston, and Leon Russell. Workplaces for musicians were scrutinized worldwide. Russell's role was immediate and physical. He performed Jump, Jack Flash, and Young Blood raw and high. Excitement, breaking benefit event formality. He later sang Beware of Darkness with Harrison on All Things Must. The difference was stark. Russell didn't sugarcoat Harrison's writing. Challenge it. He lent the song weight without excess. That balance, understanding when to lead and when to leave, is important. Russell was famous. Harrison did notice. At the concert, Harrison did more than perform. He handled pressure few musicians have. Face. He coordinated performers, sound, and carried the responsibility of the cause. He remained involved after the show's. Producer of the December 1971 live triple album with Phil Spector as well as the 1972 concert film. The effort raised millions for UNICEF and won the 1973 Grammy for Album of the Year. It also set a prototype for all subsequent large-scale benefit concerts. For Russell, not only were those weeks career advancing, they revealed. Harrison worked quietly, restrained in front, but focused behind the scenes. He took it seriously the cause. Russell recognized the pressure of that obligation and the carrying it requires discipline. Their relationship didn't last long in the recording industry, although endured subtly. Russell's concert participation linked him permanently mark a time when rock music acted properly and cooperatively. Years later, Harrison's Dark Horse Records and BMG preserved reissue Harrison's repertoire to preserve the concert for Bangladesh era new listeners. Bangladesh concerts seemed successful from the outside. After winning, both men had personal weight inside. Russell knew that strain, and what he saw there shaped his speech about success, tiredness, and the cost of perseverance. Because behind the praise and historic headlines, Leon Russell's private life was already plagued by challenges that threatened to destroy everything he built. Secret Leon Russell suffers. Leon Russell was heavy physically and emotionally before success. His challenges didn't start in adulthood or career downturn. They were from birth, influencing his movement, play, and self-image before his fame. Russell was born with major issues. A doctor apparently pulled too hard during birth, hurting his second and three vertebrae. The injury caused brain nerve damage. Affective palsy. His right side was weaker and somewhat paralyzed. Walked limping. His right hand was never as strong or controlled as his left. But instead, limitations forced adaptation, ruining his musical dreams. Russell's piano approach was unconventional but forceful, relying mainly on his left hand. Originality, which listeners admired, originated as necessity. An incident at 4 years old left Russell psychologically scarred. A strict aunt reacted severely when she found him with a cousin in an innocent childhood circumstance. She paraded him before family members, publicly shamed, and accused him of wrongdoing he didn't comprehend totally. Russell later said the humiliation sowed a seed. Humiliation and bewilderment persist. It damaged his self-image and how easy he took blame when it wasn't due. His early experiences followed throughout adulthood. Even as his career took off in the late 1960s and early 1970s, Russell roamed. He wrote hit songs, produced records, directing his own bands, and presenting vintage concerts. From outside, it appeared invincible. However, internal insecurity persisted. When the industry evolved in the late 1970s and early 80s, Russell's position transformed fast. His records sold less, radio moved on, and labels stopped prioritizing him. The change was sudden. He headlined big events to stadiums to small clubs, sometimes to unrecognizable audiences' name. That deterioration wasn't steady enough for him to adjust emotionally. One decade, he was vital. Next, he was ignored. Financial stress followed. Russell lost most of his peak earnings due to poor negotiations, management, and the simple fact that band touring costs. Touring became survival rather than artistic choice. He played continuously to finance costs, often without industry support for younger or trendier performers received. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, Russell lived quietly in Nashville, is rarely mentioned. Despite being a rock legend, he witnessed contemporaries earn honors, retrospectives, and renewed focus. His achievements were rarely highlighted, but comparisons were inevitable, especially with Elton John, who freely cited Russell as a big influence but gained more public attention. Russell stated dissatisfaction about this mismatch, not out of resentment, but because his work had slipped through cracks. The feeling of being forgotten plagued him. Russell has for decades supported others, composing, producing, and raising their records with his musicianship. Yet he stood alone when his visibility vanished. Elton John intervened in 2010, working with Russell on the union. The project brought Russell return to public attention and exposed his art to a new generation. The newfound focus was welcome, but also showed how much support he needed to restore his footing in an industry that once relied on him. Sadly, Russell had a health crisis that year. Brain surgery corrected a fluid buildup, the ailment that curtailed his career and compromised his performance. Slow and even recovery, his health declined in his later years. He had heart problems, age-related issues that restricted his movement. Russell was gloomy throughout his life. People near he saw a pattern, a hopeful interpretation and unfavorable. He immediately chose the darkest conclusion. This perspective showed decades of physical pain, embarrassment, and career failure. Self-doubt persisted steady, even though evidence suggested he deserved more confidence. The same urge for control that helped him withstand childhood injuries, industry neglect, and financial ruin didn't evaporate once his career stabilized. It followed him into business negotiations, marriages, and inventive choices that made conflicts public and allegiance was assessed. Once private struggles began in the late 1970s, breaking out in litigation, breakups, and criticism that changed the globe saw him. Scandals Leon Russell faced. One of the worst. Leon Russell had Shelter record issues. Label Russell founded 1969 with producer Denny Cordell. Shelter Records was founded to give artists freedom when labels were constricting. First, it worked. Label became recognized fast, signing Tom Petty and J.J. Khaled and releasing artist-driven, not corporate-driven records. However, the label cracks appeared as it grew. Debate arose about money management. The ownership, control, and long-term direction decisions produced friction between Cordell and Russell. By the late 1970s, conflicts grew into lawsuits. The cooperation declined after lawsuits publicly. A shared vision became a long-running conflict that exhausted Russell emotionally and financially. Fallout damaged Shelter Records and made Russell apprehensive that future commercial deals, supporting his notion that control was safer than trust. Meanwhile, his private life was unraveling in public. In 1975, Russell married vocalist Mary McCreary, and their relationship became interwoven with his profession. Together, they released Wedding Album, which combined marriage and teamwork. That statement. Closeness fueling the album produced tension. Creative disagreements left the studio. They carried control, expectations, and constant into marriage. Touring increased stress. The divorce occurred in 1980. Not a private separation. It was notable because the cooperation had been noticeable. Russell had 6 children and balanced family life within a hectic schedule was hard. Recording, touring, and resolving business issues left little time. Stability at home. Pressure and the split made Russell's life seem difficult, chaos growing behind the scenes. He also received musical criticism. In the late 1970s, Russell recorded country-influenced albums as Hank Wilson. The move confused those who knew him from rock, blues, and gospel-flavored piano. Critics accused him of shunning his roots or reputation. Others wondered why a famous artist would use an alias. Hank Wilson albums underperformed. Their meager sales kept the discussion going. It made Russell seem to be fading. While country music was always there, his background, the movie arrived while his prominence was dwindling. It made the change seem hazardous rather than exploratory. Another controversy Russell faced was his fragile professional ties. Russell was known for studio demands. He anticipated get-ready, focused, and exact musicians. In Shelter Records years, especially sessions, might be tense. Later musicians claimed he was difficult to deal with because he demanded control, not ego. Compromise was difficult since he wanted his way. He had success with that method before. Career when his authority was respected. As he lost influence, same behavior produced friction. Band dynamics weakened, cooperation halted. Quickly, shrinking his habitat and reducing the number of willing to resist or stay. Russell developed a reputation quickly. Transitioned from admired innovator to complex figure with unresolved issues conflicts. The damage was evident by the early 1980s. Industry help faded. Opportunities shrank. Control that once safeguarded him now isolates him. While Russell was faced with commercial failure, divorce, and criticism, other artists same era people struggled privately. Among them was George Harrison, whose calmness hid every different battles that would eventually emerge. Personal issues for George Harrison. Harrison joined the world, the youngest member of the Beatles' biggest band. He held that position throughout their existence. From the group started with John Lennon and Paul McCartney creating songs. Their supremacy wasn't subtle. Their album space, studio time, and creative power flowed direction often limits Harrison's growth. Inside the band, many called him the quiet Beatle, which downplayed his desire and frustration. Harrison had plenty to say. He began writing in the mid-1960s. Songs regularly, putting them into sessions to find most set aside. The trend persisted as his writing matured. On many albums, his submissions were limited to 1 or 2 tunes, regardless of quality. This wasn't about ability. His later songs like Something and Here Comes the Sun showed songwriting rivaled the finest of the time. But during the Beatles, he had to argue Tobe heard. Rejection grew slowly. Harrison collected lots of tunes that never made Beatles records due to space constraints. Creative bottleneck becomes source constantly tensed. Harrison often found studio sessions long. Performing guitar parts for other songs while working on his own. The unbalance left him feeling underappreciated, especially as the band experimented. His ideas could have thrived there. Those frustrations fueled conflicts within self. Harrison's relationship with Paul McCartney deteriorated when McCartney became directs performances and arrangements more assertively. Power increased throughout rehearsals. Conflict rather than cooperation. Harrison sometimes resisted quietly, sometimes directly, rarely successfully. Tempers dropped with John Lennon. Shaped differently. Lennon's lifestyle, changing beliefs, and aggressive demeanor clashed with Harrison's spiritual concentration developing. Though intermittent, they disagreed. Unresolved issues created distance. Fame caused more strife. Harrison never accepted some of his bandmates had Beatlemania. Screaming crowds, lack of solitude, and constant attention wore him down. Touring felt less like sharing music is more like enduring chaos. He often expressed emotion caught in celebrity life, unable to function normally. That pain drove him out. Harrison traveled to India to learn Indian music, spirituality, philosophy. His relationship with India wasn't a fad or marketing. He studied hard, built strong relationships with professors and musicians, and these impacts on his life and work. Sitar, philosophy, and discipline provided structure that celebrity lacked. Even then, struggle persisted. Harrison centered his life on Hinduism and Krishna awareness. Identity. He owned property, lived luxuriously, and was famous worldwide while trying to distance himself from his public image. Balanced opposites proved difficult. The spiritual discipline required humility and detachment, whereas his career required visibility and influence. Sometimes he sought to reconcile them. Successful, sometimes not. By the time the Beatles broke up, Harrison carried unresolved frustration for years. He developed as a lyricist without enough room. Say it. He found spirituality in public. He was famous and wealthy. His desired peace absent. George Harrison sought calm at the expense of his personal life. Like his inner, as the world became increasingly complicated, his marriage quietly broke up. He married Beatlemania Pattie Boyd in 1966. They appeared to be the perfect young, renowned couple. Admired. However, relationship strain grew soon. Harrison's traveling, changing priorities, and increased engagement drugs strained the marriage. Even worse, infidelity contributed to the downfall. This increased bitterness and emotional isolation. Boyd explained afterward that feeling alienated, facing Harrison's stardom and introspection towards spirituality that often excluded her. The marriage progressively declined without a clean slate. Rupture until a public one. It fractured Asaf Harrison's close buddy Eric Clapton. Clapton loved passionately, was in love with Boyd, and didn't disguise it. His songs were about her. He confessed and sought her while she was married to Harrison. Situation generated a publicly visible personal triangle. Boyd switched from Harrison to Clapton. Private anguish became a tabloid-covered circus. The betrayal hurt. Although Harrison and Clapton reunited and had a difficult connection, the damage persisted. Multiple levels of marital trust were destroyed. And private. The event confirmed Harrison's belief that closeness often arrived with loss. It was one of his most publicized controversies. Harrison's second marriage to Olivia Ayres improved stability. Olivia knew just how to handle stardom, and their relationship escaped the instability that ruined his previous marriage. It still had issues. The public never noticed totally faded, and Harrison's health crisis added pressure to relationship. Harrison struggled with substance abuse as an adult. Harrison experimented like his peers in the 1960s and 70s. Certain narcotics helped him discover new spirituality, philosophy, and changing his music and purpose views. However, its soon control became difficult. Substance usage hampered his focus, relationships, and stability. Emotionally present. Exploration and escape blurred, especially with stardom and music industry disenchantment. Those habits persisted. Quickly. His spiritual devotion strengthened, but excess remained, causing paradoxes that he struggled to reconcile. Harrison suffered a trauma in December 1999 that destroyed all sense of security. The burglar broke in, attacked him aggressively at home. The incident caused serious injuries that left a psychological mark. Harrison survived, but was attacked that transformed his life. Security rose, privacy fell, and he felt vulnerable long after bodily scars healed. Health challenges followed closely. Harrison smoked heavily for most of his life. Eventually caught him. In 1997, he got throat cancer. Treatment slowed him and caused him to withdraw from public life. Sadly, the later, lung cancer and brain tumors developed. As his Harrison faded from public view as his health failed. Public appearances declined, slower recordings. Once the center of the world, he now traveled slowly to conserve energy. And time. Fame, which had overwhelmed him, receded to backdrop as survival ruled. Much of this happened discreetly. It was revealed in headlines, litigation, and controversies that causing controversy even as he tried to distance himself. George Harrison's disputes. For someone who spent his entire avoiding conflict, George Harrison was involved in many controversies after the Beatles. One of the most unpleasant episodes from his biggest solo achievement. In 1970, Harrison released Dear Lord, a song of dedication and unity. Not long. Bright Tune's music sued after it became a global sensation, claiming the tune resembled He's So Fine by Chiffons. Court found Harrison guilty of purposeful copying, notwithstanding his denial that copied the previous song instinctively. The lawsuit lasted years. Harrison spent a lot of money and emotional energy. What the verdict and the suggestion that his sincerity had been compromised hurt most that have been compromised. Harrison became quite cautious about songwriting after the verdict. He doubted melodies, delayed releases, and worried about repeating things that heard before. The plagiarism lawsuit was one of the most prominent. His writing confidence was forever changed by music history. That lawsuit was not isolated. Harrison fought for years over publication and royalties. He was a generational artist, had early career contracts that curtailed control. As time passes, he focused on regaining his work after passing. His conflicts with record companies and business partners deepened his mistrust of the music industry. Business issues followed him from the Beatles. Thoroughly annoyed, Harrison mismanagement of Apple Corps, the band's company. What a creative hotspot suddenly became disorderly, financially unstable, and chaotic. Harrison watched money disappear while decisions were delayed, mishandled. That frustration increased under Alan Clean, who managed the band's money. Harrison and Clean fought over dispute over openness and power deepened divisions between Beatles. Harrison's most generous project was contentious. His Bangladesh show raised money for refugees. Concert it succeeded, but complications ensued. Tax and legal issues problems delayed funding and critics accused the project of mismanagement. Harrison insisted the money reached UNICEF, but delays clouded his intentions. An apparent humanitarian victory became a lesson in how difficult charity is to move legal systems unprepared for scale. Personal scandals added further controversy to his image. Harrison cheated with Maureen Starkey, Maureen's wife, Ringo Starr. The issue strained their group. Ringo was wounded, friendships changed, and trust was broken. Though the guys eventually continued, the episode caused stress and disrupted relationships. Those were already struggling with popularity and business. Despite tensions, Harrison had special friendships with folks who understood him beyond the media. Experiences, not images, bring people together. A Leon connection. Russell later revealed a softer truth about devotion, respect, and maintained their friendship. True story of Russell and Harrison's friendship. Leon Russell and George Harrison bonded quietly through work, long rehearsals, and great respect. Observation. Their origins, beliefs, and music approaches were diverse at various angles. However, they saw something substantial in each other early on. Harrison's steady command impressed Russell. Harrison didn't lead. Loudness or domination. After listening and waiting, he took decisions. Carried weight. This restraint stood out in rooms full of great musicians and aggressive personalities. Russell had worked with egotistical, urgent artists for years. But he realized Harrison felt different. His priority was always purpose over image, especially when pressure peaked. That difference became apparent during concert preparations, Bangladesh. Harrison organized a large event with minimal help. Precedent. Russell witnessed him face criticism, logistical upheaval, and creative conflicts without unraveling. The prolonged rehearsals showed Harrison's dedication. Project. They collaborated musically respectfully, but not easily. When Russell approached Beware of Darkness instinctively, not imitating. He did not try to imitate Indian music, but he focused on texture and emotion, unusual instruments and rhythms that referenced Harrison without imitating. Harrison welcomed that method. He trusted Russell to interpret rather than copy to add something personal to the music. Russell also noted their studio temperaments varied. He valued efficiency and instinct, while Harrison liked repetition and refinement, following take till he felt settled. Russell discovered that method tedious and aggravating, but he knew why. Russell was not as spiritual as Harrison, but he took Krishna awareness seriously. Harrison is dedicated. He noticed it shaped his environment. How Harrison's speech, treatment of others, and view on music bigger than fun. Russell was indirectly impacted by such mindset. Nothing changed his beliefs, but it broadened his view of music beyond success and fame. From Harrison, the respect was obvious too. He liked Russell's versatility. Russell was comfortable with rock, gospel, blues, and soul. Harrison appreciated Russell's enthusiasm and grounding at the Bangladesh concert. Stage presence. Harrison recognized Russell as one of many musicians who understood music, not just performance, but service. How about Leon Russell and George Harrison's pal? Leave comments below, like, subscribe, and click the next video if you like this one. Join our channel for updates.